Hi everyone. Today I would like to show you how to make a wall chicken sculpture. So that'd be a sculpture that hangs on a wall. And this one, in this case, is going to be in the shape of a chicken. I did bring along a needle tool, a red rubber rib, some little wooden knife, and a little carving tool to help out. But mostly I will probably be just using my hands and also some water. So I have a banding wheel. This turns it really easily, and a wooden bat so that the clay doesn't stick as much. I'm starting out by taking a kind of oval shaped hunk of clay and pounding it down in the center to rough out the shape. Then, it's a little big, I'm going to push the clay to the sides like this, moving the clay, and I want to make this as thin and light as possible. And I'm not a person who believes that sculpture has to be really thin and light, but for this, I think it is kind of important because it's going to hang on a wall and we don't want to pull down your sheetrock. So let's try to make it just a little on the thin side. So I'm starting out with, I'm going to have a more teardrop shape once I get going here. And I'm just pinching that clay up. I know I pinch with two hands. I think beginners oftentimes will pinch just with one, their dominant hand, but after 30 years of this, I've gotten pretty adept at using both hands. I pinch it down to about 1/4 of an inch or less, and now it truly does look like a teardrop shape. I'm going to make a coil, and I'm going to add the coil on. Now I know sometimes there are many of my students who have learned how to slip in score between each coil, and the coil is rounded. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to roll a coil, and I usually roll my coils in my hands, but some people find it easier to roll on the tabletop, starting in the middle and pushing outward. Then I will flatten the coil. I know this goes against what some of you may have learned. It's okay to try something new. So the thickness is about the thickness of the lip I'm attaching it to. Now, if this starts getting a little sticky and wet, I can flip my bat and it'll be a little drier and less tendency for it to stick. Now, I'm going down on the inside and putting it down just about 1/8 of an inch down on the inside, the coil, and I'm pinching it on all the way around. Doesn't matter if my coil goes all the way around though. I can just add in another hunk where it left off and pinch that on. Now this is going to be the head of the chicken. This is going to be the body, just kind of like the breast part of it. And I'm going to smooth it down on the inside with my thumb, and on the outside I'm going to pull it up and in. The thing about pinching and coiling is that the angle of your hand really tells the clay which way to go. If I just keep going outward, it's because the angle of my hand is pointing in that direction. But if I want this to go in, I simply change the direction of my hand so it's going in. And where I want it to go out, I do the opposite. This is a hard thing. I think it's an easy thing as an idea, but I think it's a hard thing for my students to do sometimes, is to realize that the angle of their hand really matters. So rolling a coil, kind of a human extruder in a way. No problem with that. Sometimes if it's a little bit big, I'll roll it just a little bit more. Always fanning my hands out. Flatten. I know some people use the paddle a lot when they are trying to make the clay go in, and I don't do that much. I really find that the angle of my hand dictates where the clay is supposed to go, and I don't have to do that. So I just keep moving up and in, connecting every single coil. I'm keeping the clay pretty rough. I'm not trying to smooth it a lot, but if you were an animal that wasn't quite so feathery, rough as a chicken, you could use a rib, a red rib I like to use because of the flexibility, and you could smooth that out if that was what you wanted to do. Unfortunately, That's not what I would like to do today. All right, so we're moving up and in slowly and connecting every single coil on both sides. That is less for the look of it for me as for making sure the wall doesn't have super thin spots where it could run into troubles. So making another coil. I don't advise making the coils ahead of time. It can sometimes dry out on you just as you're trying to assemble them. You might not use them all and then you have to deal with some drier clay. I usually will just make them as I go along. All right, so now I'm just gonna bring this in quite a bit. Now you might be wondering, why is she making a chicken? Mostly because I have chickens. And they're awesome. They may have a really small brain, it's true, teeny tiny. I mean, their heads are really small. How big can the brain be? Not big. Not big at all. All right, now this needs to set up just a little bit. We talk about setting up in ceramics, but setting up just really means the clay has to dry a bit. And there's really no fast way to do that. I have witnessed people using blow torches, and it's fun. I myself have given it a whirl, but I don't think it's wise. It dries the clay only really on the outside, and it can bring the clay to bisque temperature in a really fast period of time, and it's not good. So it's not a good practice. It's better to let it dry. How long? It depends. Like here, the snow is melting and the air is humid. I think it would take a little while for this, maybe a half hour, an hour for this to set up where I could keep adding to it. But in drier climates, pretty fast. So you may not even have to take a break. You might be able to keep working. But here I do have to let this set up. And the reason I know is that it moves so easily, it has to set up a bit. I like working with the clay that wet, but it does come to a stopping point. You can see from the side view, this is where the head is going to go eventually. And this is where there's going to be just a little bit more of a breast moving in. So let me get the one that I started earlier. This is just like the food TV where they just take the thing out of the oven and it's already done. And this is what I have started so far. Looks like a blob, kind of, but right now I'm getting ready to put the chicken head on. Now, I could make the chicken head separately, but I like to not add things on that way sometimes if I can get away with it. And so I'm going to add a couple coils on to this and then close it off. Once the air is trapped, I can really work with modeling it, and it's a little bit stronger than if it were open, because air pocket kind of holds that shape. So again, I have my and angling in, and I'm connecting each coil completely, and I'm going to squeeze it, kind of pinching it inward. Now I said before I want this as thin as possible, and that's true, but so I'm going as thin as I can when I'm building it, but I'm also going to carve feathers in once it's together. So I'm not too stressed out about it weighing a little bit right now, although the weight is actually pretty light. All right, now I'm going to lift this up a little bit. I think we're getting close. Just trying to think about my chickens for inspiration. We have 3 chickens, and one of them is very old. Sparkles is her name, and it is not one of those names that fits the personality of the chicken. If it did, we would probably call her something like elusive or cannibal. But she is our chicken. And although she is, I don't know what like it is in chicken years, but I think the longevity of a chicken is right around 3 to 5 years, and she's like 8. So she should kick off at any time. Right now, I'm gonna pull this to kind of create the top of the head. And I'll try to turn this sideways to show you. And I'm just forming the beak and kind of closing this up. We'll make this into sparkles. I don't know what kind of chicken she is. Most of the chickens we get around here are like secondhand chickens. Like they are come to us by accident. So I got sparkles after some of our chickens died and we were left with just one. And you know, one is the loneliest number. So I got another chicken named Flowers. I got Sparkles, and then the chicken that I bought Sparkles for passed away, cutting the beak open and pinching it. She wants to attack, because she does. And so then Sparkles was the lone chicken, so I got another chicken from a friend. That one wasn't in the best condition. Her butt was all red and she looked like she was ready, you know, for chicken heaven. And so about 3 weeks after we got her, she died. Not sure how, but when we opened up the coop, Sparkles was standing on top of her. It's a true story. But Sparkles is a little bit more subdued now in her older age. All right, this is what we're getting into here. This is a side view of Crazy Sparkles. And the front view. And now I can start to play around with the air inside of it. You can see the air kind of move. I can play around with the shape. You can see that I added on the comb, but just hardly any adding on, really just closing up and modeling the chicken. And then I can get in there if I want to, and I can carve, you know, some of those feathers out. It's better to carve it leather hard though, so this will be a second part to this chicken sculpture, is doing something called sgraffito. That will take place in the next video segment. And also I will show how to add a keyhole on the back for hanging on a wall. All right, that's it for now. And I will see you all in about